لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وقدوتنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, first we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once again. Allah has granted us the tawfiq and the ability to have performed our Maghrieb Salaah with Jama'ah. Alhamdulillah. We make dua, Allah accept our Salah with Jama'ah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us sincerity and istiqamah. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, this evening we start with the introduction in the tafsir, very beautiful surah of the Quran, and also the shortest surah of the Quran, Surah Al-Kawthar, only 3 ayat of the Quran. And this surah, as the Mufassir mentioned, this surah begins with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala consoling the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This surah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to console the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Allah acknowledging the Quran that Rasulullah sometimes his heart will become restricted. He will feel the emotion, the negative emotion sometimes of what he goes through in terms of the Quraysh and what the things they say to him and the things they do to him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals ayat to console Rasulullah. And sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do it in a way where Allah reveals and Allah speaks to Rasulullah regarding other prophets and what they went through and what difficulty they went through to console the heart of Rasulullah. And in this instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala consoles the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam by giving Rasulullah a beautiful gift. And Allah starts off the surah, and before we get to the surah, the Mufassirun mentioned that the enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they thought that Rasulullah had been completely ruined, had been cut off from his community, strayed, he was ruined, and his male children who could carry on his name were all dead. As we have mentioned this morning, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also expressed emotion, also cried when losing a child, when losing his beloved children. So when he lost his beloved sons, imagine how heartless a person, and how much hatred is in the heart of a person when you see someone you dislike, he loses a son or a daughter, then you, because of your dislike to that person, you mock him. Imagine how it hurt, how more hurtful is it? So they thought, and because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam now no more sons left, they thought, who's going to carry on? He is completely ruined. Who's going to carry on his mission? Who's going to spread this deen? Who's going to take over after him? He's now completely helpless, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can imagine the emotion and the state of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah reveals, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر, that verily we have granted you al-Kawthar. That verily, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have granted you al-Kawthar. Abu Bishr said that I said to Sa'id bin Jubair that verily people are claiming that it is a river in Jannah. And Sa'id replied that the river which is in Jannah is part of the goodness which Allah has gave Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we speak about the river of Kawthar, the river Kawthar, the word Kawthar comes from the word abundance in Kathir. And so the Mufassirun mentioned it doesn't only refer to Kawthar, to the river Kawthar, but it refers that Allah has granted Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam much greater in everything of good in this dunya, not only in this dunya but the akhirah as well. To them it might look like Rasul sallallahu had nothing. To them it might look like Rasulullah is now helpless, there's no one to carry on his legacy. But Allah is telling Rasulullah that, O Muhammad, we have given you abundance of good. And this is when I read this first ayah, I was thinking, Ya Allah, and this is not only with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is the condition of every believer. We have true iman in Allah. Every test he goes through, every test he must tell himself, Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar, that indeed Allah has granted me also abundance. We're looking at our brothers and sisters suffering in Palestine and Gaza, and if we really have to assess the situation, if we really look at what do they lose besides losing their life, and their loved ones. If you look at what do they lose and what do they gain, what they gain is much more. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, if you want to know what is the comparison of this dunya compared to the akhirah, dip your finger in the ocean and whatever, and take your finger out. Whatever remains on the finger, that is this dunya, and the entire ocean is the akhirah. So in the reality, they've achieved in abundance. Allah's granted them much more in return of what they've lost. Just when we were discussing Imam Suyuti, rahimahullah, when he spoke about the shuhada, and he spoke about how, what do the shuhada feel when Malakul Maut takes their ruh? Just this afternoon we read a story of one of the shuhada, the mothers of the shuhada was mentioning that as they were evacuating one of the buildings and the sun was running and she was ahead and the sun was running, and as he was running, the missile dropped and completely destroyed. And she was in a state, and eventually made peace with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed. And she mentioned that the evening she went to go sleep and she dreamt about her beloved son. And he's in a very beautiful garden. It's like someone is enjoying himself. And she speaks to him and she asks him that, oh my son, did you feel any pain at that moment when that missile, when that building collapsed on you? And he says, oh my mother, it was just like a pinch. And Imam Suyuti rahimahullah, when he discusses taken on the hadith of Rasulullah, when he speaks about how Malakul Maut takes the ruh of the shuhada, the hadith of Rasulullah speaks that when the shuhada's ruh are taken, it feels like a pinch. Just like a pinch, and it feels like a pinch, and the next moment they're in Jannah. And this is exactly what he explained to his mother. So in the reality, what did they lose besides his love, his life, and the loved ones he left behind, which will eventually meet in Jannah? Ameen. Allah's granted him much more in abundance. So Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling, Allah is consoling the heart of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. No matter what they are saying of what you have lost and whatever difficulty you go through, we have given you much more in abundance. We have given you all types of khair. In the hadith, Rasul Sallallahu explaining, Imam Ahmad recorded Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, where he speaks about the description of this Kawthar. And he says Rasul Sallallahu says it is a river in paradise which banks are of gold, and it runs over pearls. His water is whiter than milk and sweeter than honey. This will be the river in Jannah which Allah has given to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, from which Rasulullah will give his ummah to drink. On the day of Qiyamah, the hadith of Rasul Sallallahu mentioned that when the ummah, the hadith Abu Hurairah when narrated, when the Prophet Sallallahu said that verily my fountain is wider than the distance between Ayla and Adan. And I checked the distance, we say about 800 kilometers, 800 miles. This is how wide this river will be. Its water is whiter than ice, sweeter than honey and milk. Its cups are more numerous than the stars. Verily it will block, I will block some people from it, just like how a man blocks away camels that wants to drink from his well. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying, I will block away people like how people block away camels who want to drink from his fountain. They said, oh Rasulullah, how will you recognize us on the day of Qiyamah? How will you recognize your ummah? Then Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that you will have marks which no one amongst people will have but you. You will come to me with a blazing forehead and a bright hands and feet from the traces of wudu. So the wudu that we took, the way we washed our faces and the arms and our feet, these parts of our bodies will shine on the day of Qiyamah, and because of it Rasulullah will recognize us. Because of it Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam will recognize us. So we make dua that Allah make us of those who will meet Rasulullah at this pond. Not to make us of those who Rasulullah will block and say, no, you cannot drink, you're not worthy of drinking. So we ask Allah protection and grant us of those who will be in the company of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Therefore turn and pray to Allah and sacrifice. This command was given during the time when the pagans of Arabia worshipped the self-created gods and offered sacrifices in their shrine. Therefore the intention of the command is contrary to the polytheists. practice. You should remain steadfast on your creed. Your prayer is only for Allah and your sacrifice is also only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here Allah is telling us that through the difficulty and through whatever they are saying and through whatever you are going, remember Allah has kept a special reward, the Kawthar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us to perform our salah, to worship Allah alone sincerely for Allah. And many times at the time when we go through difficulty, that is the time when we crack. As you normally say, that's the time we crack. And then sometimes you lose our mind, we lose our iman also with it. Allah is telling us, remain steadfast on your deen, remain steadfast on the command of Allah, abstain from the prohibition of Allah. You will find the help and assistance of Allah. You will find the reward of Allah that Allah has kept in place for us. And this way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Allah has given us in abundance on condition that we remain through the difficulty and through that storm, we remain of those who will keep onto our iman. We remain of those who will worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. For indeed, for he who hates you, he will be cut off. For indeed, the one who is making these accusations, the one who is hating you, O Rasulullah, they will be the one who will be cut off. And that is the reality today. We look at it, that no one knows that the descendants of Abu Jahl, no one knows the descendants of Abu Lahab. But look at Rasulullah, the one who they said will be cut off. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. Allah has elevated the mention of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the extent that every second of the day Rasulullah is being praised. Every second of the day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his name is being mentioned. We know the progeny, the lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know the grandchildren of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's traces, there's records of it. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was preserved. There was nothing cut off and nothing lost of Rasulullah. And look at those people who made the claim. Where are they today? Where are their legacy that they held on so proudly? Nothing of them remained but the evil they used to do, and the evil they used to say, and the evil they used to cause to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who through the difficulty and through the trials we go through, keep in mind that Allah has consoled the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that indeed there's great reward waiting for us. There's great reward waiting for us. In order for us to attain that reward by Allah, that through the difficulty, through the test, remain steadfast in your worship of Allah, remain sincere in your worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those, as Allah mentioned many places in the Quran, those who mock at the believers, those who laugh at the believers, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ. On the day of Qiyamah, those believers who the kuffar used to mock, to laugh at in this dunya, on the day of Qiyamah, they will be reclining on couches in Jannah, and they will be laughing at them. This is how the wheel will turn, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and understanding. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.